It's time for another episode of The Cheat Sheet.
The podcast where we interview top VCE performers
And deconstruct the strategies they use to achieve incredible results at school and in life.
Hello everyone, this is Monique and I am joined today by the lovely Vidhi, who achieved a 50 in legal studies last year as a year 11 student, and she's now completing year 12. How are you going, Vidhi?
Pretty good, actually. It's a little nerve-wracking, but, you get through it.
Fantastic. Going into year 11 and doing a year 12 subject, what sort of expectations or goals did you have of yourself?
Well, I had quite high expectations, I'm not going to lie, and it was kind of one of those things that you shouldn't really put that high of expectations on yourself in the first place, just because it's good to have high goals, but it's not good to beat yourself over them. Do you know what I mean? I went in class, first lesson, and my teacher asked everybody to go around and say what they wanted out of this subject or out of year 12 for those who were doing year 12. And I remember that I was one of the first or second people who said their goal, and I said I want a 50. And Monique just told me that she kind of looked at me and was like, okay, cool. So it was one of those things where aim high and try to work towards that aim instead of just having that aim and thinking that it'll happen itself.
Do you feel like having that goal of getting a 50 contributed to that big achievement?
Absolutely. It drove me so, I was so motivated because I wanted it. And it was one of those things I was just trying to prove myself right to just, I can do it. Despite some of the challenges that come along with doing VCE or just school in general, there's stressful times. Everybody's got things going on in different parts of their lives, and this is just one of those things where you can go in and you can just smash it, and it's a souvenir to yourself as well, and being yeah, I did it, and it's possible again because I just proved to myself that I can do it.
Fantastic. Yeah. So it's all about having those big goals, but not beating yourself up about it too much if you don't reach it, but having that big goal to work towards and motivate yourself in those tricky times.
Lovely. Summed it up perfectly.
If someone wanted to get a 50, what would your advice be to them? How did you get a 50 in legal?
Just work hard, use your resources and just like what you're doing, essentially, because a lot of the times people pick subjects because they scale or something like that, but I just genuinely enjoyed legal as a subject, so that was that pretty much.
So apart from enjoying it, were there any other reasons why you chose that subject as your pre-year 12 VCE subject?
I intend to do law in uni as well, and I'm considering it as a career path, so that was a pretty good leeway into seeing if it would be something that I'd like to do, and it is.
Fantastic. And in terms of being in year 11 and doing a year 12 subject, how did you find in terms of time management? Did you find that it was an advantage to have that one year 12 subject to focus on?
Absolutely. I think it was a really good experience to just see how SACs work and 3-4 subjects and whatnot, and just see how you could manage your time. And it wasn't about neglecting your 11 subjects at all. You just work with it as you would and kind of see how it is.
So try and balance it out with
exactly.
your 11 subjects. Fantastic. And I guess, as you've said, it gives you that extra bit of experience leading into year 12 of how to manage your subjects.
Exactly.
Have you found that to be an advantage? We're now in term 2. Have you found that to be an advantage going into year 12 with your subjects?
Definitely. I also do BizMan, which is a quite similar structured subject. So I have some, for example, I used flashcards a lot last year, and this year I'm learning that that's what works for me, so I'm doing a lot of that. And I can't type notes whatsoever, so I have to handwrite them just because it just processes better in my brain, and that's what I found. So it helps a lot seeing what has been working for me and using that.
Fantastic. And can you tell us about any of your other study habits that you've that you've implemented in year 12, maybe for some of your other subjects that are a bit different to legal?
Study habits, it was a lot about time management, I found. So instead of like just looking at, I have a SAC on Friday and let's start studying Monday, I'd start like 2 weeks before, 3 weeks before, and just definitions and whatnot. Like, for example, again, BizMan, or if it was like methods with practicing questions or whatnot, I'd start doing the practices earlier, just so that it's not about like cramping in your head, because in the end you have to realize that the exam is the test of the entire year and not just at that moment. So it's about registering it in your long-term memory instead of your short-term, and like using that to your advantage to an extent. So as I was saying, with like definitions and whatnot, I'd start like 3 weeks earlier, and I'd just like put them on the kitchen table with my flashcards, and like if mum walked past or something, she'd ask me a definition, and that like I'd repeat it or whatnot. And so like I'd just go with that, and it'd be kind of a game, so that it doesn't feel like studying. And I find that as soon as like I'm telling myself, oh, I need to study, or like I need to sit down and do this, I'm just not in the right headspace anymore, because it's just, you feel too much pressured, and it feels like it's an obligation instead of something that you want to do.
Right.
So try to make it something that you want to do.
So you found it sort of an accumulation of knowledge over time in the build up to the exam, so you haven't got to jam pack everything in your revision at the end of the year.
Because legal, especially at the end in the exam, I didn't find myself frantically trying to figure out what my what I still haven't learned or whatnot, because it was just in my long-term memory, because I did all that revision as I went, so I didn't have to be as pressured as a lot of the other people around me that I found, and which was helpful.
Okay, so then you've obviously got no need to rewrite your notes and waste time, things like that. So with that extra time that you had towards the end of the year, how did you go about approaching that exam revision period?
Practice questions. I just did them like, it was my Bible. Like, I was just doing practice questions every VCAP practice exam that I could find since like, I think 2004. I did that. I think I did up to 20, and it wasn't even about quantity. It was, as soon as I did them, I'd go to my teacher. As soon as I had found time, I'd go to my teacher, because like I was really fortunate with a really good teacher, and she was always happy to help. And I really found that people weren't using the resource that we have, and go outside of class, go ask for help. She is happy to help you. Like, that's just what teachers are there for, so you just got to use that. And I found that really helpful, because the feedback was so important and so well given, that I knew what I needed for that question. Like, if there was a 4-marker, exactly what 4 points did I need to make to get those 4 marks? What sets me apart from the rest of the state, and stuff like that. It wasn't, because everybody knows the content, and it was just about, getting it in a way that the examiners would want it.
Fantastic. So quality over quantity when it comes to practice exams. Because that kind of debugs the rumor that you've just got to do hundreds and hundreds of practice exams.
Honestly, I'm sure that even if I didn't do that quantity, I just happened to have that time on my hands, being a year 11 student, that I had the privilege to do all of those and had the time. But as a year 12 student, I'm sure I'm not going to have that time at the end of the year, and just getting them checked. And I found myself trying to like consolidate in myself that because stress and stuff, so you get freaked out. So I'd do like the easier questions, and then I'd kind of repetitively do them, because a lot of the legal questions would be quite repetitive. And I was just kind of like, yep, got this, and I'd like neglect like the 6 markers, 10 markers. And towards the end, I had this chat with my teacher, Ms. Katab, and she said, just stop doing those, those, just stop. And I was like, okay. So I did the 10, 8, 6 markers, and that's where the marks are, I found.
So challenging yourself.
Yeah, challenging yourself and trying to get that challenge right.
Fantastic. And in terms of your approach to those practice exams, were you doing them under time conditions, or how did you break them up over a long period? How did you approach that?
So instead of just putting myself in like I've got 90 minutes, got to do the exam, I'd look at the question, and if it's like 3-mark question, or 10-mark question, I'd look at the time allocated for that one question, and I'd set a timer on my phone, try to not get distracted, which is hard to do, and just like set myself 15 minutes for that 10 marker, because it's 1.5 minutes per mark from what I remember, and just do that question and just stop at that for a bit, check it, read the examiner's report. Examiner's reports are so helpful, always. And just kind of go about that, give myself feedback, correct it, and just try not to make the same mistake again.
Okay, so approaching the questions almost sort of one by one rather than exhausting yourself and doing them in those big blocks.
Exactly, again, quality over quantity, always.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And for any of those students taking legal studies this year, do you have any particular subject-specific advice in regards to getting that magic 5.0?
Well, it's a very content-heavy subject, and you just don't want to overwhelm yourself with everything there is. Like, I know there can be some dry areas. For example, the Constitution, I know a lot of people weren't too happy about. Just take it slow. Understand it instead of like trying to just memorize it for that one sack, and because it's such a real life application thing as well. It's not one of those things that it's just you do it once and it's gone. It's like it's valuable to know that information, so you might as well try to find the upside of it and use that to your advantage to make sure that you're enjoying it slightly, or not making sure it's not a obligation. Again, I said that before as well. It's just try to make it enjoyable for yourself.
Sounds like that's the big factor in choosing any subject going into year 12, and especially that early subject that you've got so much focus on in year 11 is choosing that subject that you know you're going to enjoy.
Exactly.
And hopefully it pays off for you into your university studies.
Hope so.
Best of luck to you, Vidhi. Thank you very much for joining us.
No worries. Thank you for having me.
Like this episode? Head to thecheatsheet.net.au for show notes, real-life cheat sheets, and links to our social media pages. Thanks for listening.